Welcome everybody to Mary Giuliani Live. I am so thrilled you guys are here tonight. I've got a great show. I've got Lago, who has an amazing story of really how to turn tragedy into triumph. So we'll get over to Amber in just a moment. She's waiting in our virtual green room. But before we get to Amberly, I wanted to just welcome the new people that are here tonight and let you know the whole purpose of this show is to help you transform your life. And what I've found is from my own path of the past 30 years, it wasn't until I really put myself in environments where there were people that were really taking risks and going for it in their lives, and that I was really inspired and supported and going for it in what I wanted in my life. So that's why I thought this would be a great talk show, because environments are so powerful to inspire us. So every week I interview a guest that is really stepping out of their comfort zone and going for something that they really love, and just dealing with all of the growth edges that come up during the process. So it's a really fun way to learn about people and learn that you are more powerful than you realize. By the way, if you are watching and you are not on my email list, you need to get on it, because you can find out who my guests are that are coming up. So all you need to do is go over to marygiulianilive.net and go to the free newsletter and just put in your name and email address. You just get one email a week with the name of the person and what they're going to be talking about with me. And then also, you'll get links to the show's recordings from the previous week, and you get audio or video, whatever you want to listen to. And sometimes I'll throw in some inspirational blog posts too. So, by the way, if you are on iTunes, you can subscribe to my iTunes channel, Mary Giuliani Live, and get it automatically each show every week downloaded right into your phone. So check that one out too. If you would like to ask Amberly questions, how you can do that is you do need to go up to the Watch Live page on my website, so marygiuliani.net, Watch Live, and right below the live stream box is a chat box, and that's where I field all the questions. So make sure that you go to that chat box. You just got to log in. I mean, you can click on the little Facebook button and it'll automatically log you in if you're already logged into Facebook, or if you don't want to do it that way, you can do it the other way. But definitely ask Amberly questions, and if you have any questions for me, you're welcome to do that as well. So if you're on Facebook right now, then just make sure you come over to the Watch Live page so that you can ask questions. So with that, let's see, what do I say about Amberly? My God. It was sort of a twist of fate that we really even got connected. That's what's so beautiful about doing this show is I was taking a speaker's workshop, and the woman, Deborah Shames, that was holding it, just said to me, "You need to talk to Amberly Lago." And I'm like, okay. And she just knew that for some reason that Amberly would be perfect for this show. And so, of course, I connected with her, and oh my God, you'll hear it as we talk about all these things that we have in common. So there are no mistakes. And as I said, Amberly is a motivational speaker. She's also an author of her brand new book, which is True Grit and Grace. Being a Texan, it's a perfect title. And she started her speaking career after her whole life was deeply altered after a really horrific motorcycle accident. And she'll share with us what happened and how it impacted her life, and how she has been able to get up and get on with her life and create a life she loves regardless of the tragedy. And so she's really teaching us all that we can turn any kind of tragedy or negative experience into triumph if we have the right tools and the right attitudes. And so her book is amazing, so I'm excited to talk to her about the book as well. So with that, let's bring on Amberly. Hey, Amberly.
Hi, Mary. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. I'm so thrilled that you could make it.
Oh, me too. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, oh my God, after we started talking for remember within the first 5 minutes, you were telling me about how you were having this chronic pain issue. And I'm like, oh my God, I got diagnosed with the same thing you did. And so I know you probably want to get to that a little bit later in your story, but it was just like uncanny, the kind of similarities, how we can really relate to a lot of the similar things that have come up for you. So it's just so perfect that we were brought together.
It sure is, because it's very rare to find someone that has that same nerve disease and
Yeah,
that gets it
yeah,
and understands it. So,
yeah. It's amazing. So, well, if you wouldn't mind, just maybe just to start off, just sharing a little bit about your background, growing up in Texas, and the whole Texas culture of get her done and suck it up, and how it prepared you to really
yeah.
persevere. So that'd be great.
Yeah, I grew up in a small town in Texas where we did have sayings like get her done and suck it up. And although, suck it up can be taken kind of negatively, it really helped me persevere through my surgeries, my accident, and a lot of things that I did in life. I grew up in a small town and um, started dancing. I was an athlete. I did ballet, tap, and jazz. And I always knew from a really young age, from about 8 years old, that I wanted to grow up and be a dancer and move to California. I had seen,
Wow.
MTV videos and stuff where I saw dancers, and I knew that LA was the place where you could go and dance and make a living at it. And so I would
Mm-hmm.
go to conventions in Dallas, Joe
Mm-hmm.
Tremaine conventions. And then when I moved to LA, well, before I moved, I really had to work hard. I babysat. I was a lifeguard. I worked at a little store called the Cookie Jar selling cookies. I basically did
Oh my
whatever I could do
God.
to save up money to move to California. And I
Uh-huh.
managed to save up $1,200 and packed my bags and was on my way and moved out and just loved auditioning. And my first music video, and I'm really going to date myself here, was a
Ah.
video for MC Hammer. So
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
yeah, it was so much fun. And so I really got to experience the whole dancing, traveled. I got to go to Japan and traveled in Europe. And
Uh-huh.
it was a lot of hard work and
Yeah.
a lot of discipline, but it was my dream and I was so passionate about it. And who would have thought I'd
Absolutely.
be out here 27 years later?
I know. It's just amazing, how just somehow our dream seems to follow us, and eventually, if we listen, we honor it and we start following it. Um, so in your book, you not only talk about this terrible accident, but you also talk about how your childhood was really challenging as well, just from some abuse issues that came up for you, and then there was also a divorce that happened in your family. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think, gosh, being a mom is one of the hardest jobs I've ever done.
Hmm.
I just had my daughter, my youngest daughter, who's 9 years old, yesterday. She told me, yeah, Mom, I remember when I was 5 and you shut the door on my leg. And I was like, it was an accident. So I know
Oh my
we
God.
all have things happen in our childhood and we
Uh-huh.
all, experience traumatic things in our childhood. But um, my parents were divorced when I was about 8 or 9, and my mom
Hmm.
remarried. And my stepfather actually abused me. I was sexually abused by him.
Oh,
And that's something that I didn't talk about for a long time. I held on to a lot of shame about that.
yeah.
But it is something that I talk about in my book. And it's an uncomfortable subject, especially for people who know me, even, my husband to hear me talk about, or family members to hear me talk about. But the reason I bring it up is because it's so common now for that to happen. And I feel like
Right.
it's so important for women, children, to know that they can have a safe place to talk about it, that
Yes.
they don't have to hold on to that shame, and
Oh
they
my
can
God,
move
totally.
forward and live a happy life. And so that's why I talked about that a little bit in the book. Um,
Yeah.
and then, things that happened to me in my childhood, like I talked a little bit about my brother and how we used to fight, and he used to really
Yes. Beat you up.
give me a good
Yeah.
beating. But,
Yeah.
it inspired me to when, I moved to LA, I took up boxing and Krav Maga
Yeah.
and Muay Thai kickboxing, and I learned to fight and defend myself. And thank God, because I carried that through my life, and I let those things strengthen me.
Absolutely.
Rather than play that victim role, you can
Right.
take things and learn from them and grow from them.
Right, exactly. Well, that's such a great lesson for any of us, It's like we have a choice. We can look at this like as a teacher, or like that life is doing it to us versus life is doing it for us. So
Yeah, I really
lessons.
feel like we can learn and grow from every opportunity, and it's how you look at it. And it is, we have the power, we have the choice to grow from it, and we have the choice to be happy and live the life that we've always imagined, even though our circumstances may have narrowed our possibilities.
Right. And what's I think the big challenge for most people is that if you're raised in a family that hasn't really done a lot of personal development or emotional intelligence work or whatever, it's sort of like you're in this bubble of whatever the family custom or culture is. And so until you break free and sort of individuate into your own personal growth path, it's hard sometimes to really grow and develop
Oh,
what it
yeah. I
is
mean,
that you want authentically,
I, I come from, it was the South where you don't talk about those things, or from Texas is like its
Yeah,
own
yeah.
country. And it was all about hide your crazy and be a lady. And,
That's really
it was
funny.
like, oh, we don't
I've
want to
never
talk
heard
about
that
that.
say. Is that
You
is that is
never
that like
heard.
a common Texan saying? Hide your crazy and be a lady.
I think so. Or maybe it's just from where I'm from, but no, it was like, it hurts to be pretty, and hide your crazy and be a lady. And no matter what, you get her done. You suit up, show up. So in
Wow.
other words,
Be strong. In other words, don't be vulnerable. Don't be weak. Don't show
don't
weakness.
show your weaknesses. And at a young age, uh, with my stepfather, with him, he loved, he would get me to the point where he could see me cry.
Hmm.
That's where he took in, he loved it. He enjoyed that moment. So
Having that power, kind of.
it was like a power. It was, and
Yeah.
so I learned my power against him was to not cry, and
Right.
to stuff those feelings down, and to not deal with it. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until I had my accident, and we'll talk about that, that I had to sit with a lot of feelings and learn how to deal
Yeah.
with it and develop tools on how to deal with it, because you
Absolutely.
can't just keep sucking it up, and you can't just
No.
always hide your crazy and be a lady.
Yeah. Oh, and well, the other thing I wanted to ask you is, what's the deal about pretty is painful, or what was it? The other
Oh, it hurts
saying.
to be pretty.
What does that
Oh, my
mean?
mom is going to kill me. Well, that was very, as she would brush my hair out and it'd be pulling my hair, the brush was pulling my
Oh,
hair. She'd say, it hurts to be pretty. So
oh
that,
my
had you ever
God.
heard that?
No,
It was,
never.
it was kind of that, well, you're suffering, but once again, suck it up. It hurts, but put a smile on your face,
So, in other words, the
and
sacrifice is worth the reward, sort of thing.
yeah. And, I dancing, my dance teacher, Jackie Nutting, was a big mentor. She's a role model for me. And
Uh
she
huh.
really, not just, she didn't teach me how to dance. She taught me how to dance and taught me business skills. And
Wow.
I started teaching dance, understudying, and then teaching dance when I was 13. And
Yeah.
she taught us that no matter what was going on in your life, she didn't care if you lost your best friend or your dog died. You, as soon as that needle went on the record and you turned your back to face the class, you put on a smile on your face. In other words, you
Hmm.
suck it up and you do a good job. And
Right.
so, in other words, you don't play into that victimhood. You try to do your
Right.
best.
The highest
So
value is to just be strong.
to be strong. And then as an athlete, I ran track. I was a long distance runner. And we trained in the Texas heat. We would condition ourselves. It would be 100 degrees outside running on the track, and it's hot and humid. And, our track coach, I'd get sick on the track, and the track coach would just look at me and say, off the track to throw up, and then keep running. So it was just like,
oh my God, there was no compassion, nothing. It was just like,
no,
tough
you
love
were
city.
a competitor, and you did whatever it took to finish the job. And that helped me later on in my recovery process. It helped me as a trainer. It helped me as an athlete. It helped me recover from all the surgeries. It helped me recover from 34 surgeries.
Well, maybe that would be a good place for us to maybe cut to the accident and then now so that people can kind of get some context about what we're talking about. You know what I mean? So would you mind sharing basically what happened?
Yeah. Well, in the blink of an eye, your whole life can change. And that for me, I had, moved out here, been a dancer. I'd started, my fitness career because I didn't want to travel anymore. I have an older daughter, and I met my now husband. I was a single mom with her for a while. And when I met my husband, Johnny, we had a little girl. Her name's Ruby, and she was at the time 2 years old. But life was good. Like, I had the husband of my dreams. My career was booming. I had trainers that worked for me, along with the full clientele that I had, 2 healthy daughters, and it was a Memorial Day weekend. And I had just finished training clients, and I was on my way home to start the weekend. It was a Friday afternoon, and I was on Ventura Boulevard in Woodland Hills, and I was cruising down, beautiful California day, and I looked over to the right, and I saw a guy coming out of the parking lot, or he looked like he saw me. He was at the edge of the parking lot. And just as I came up closer, as when you're on a motorcycle, you have to drive defensively. So you're not just driving along and certainly not looking at anything other than people around you. And so you make eye contact with other drivers. And I thought I made eye contact with him, but he punched it out of the driveway and rammed his SUV right into me, and my leg took the brunt of the impact. So I didn't have time to do anything other than try to jump off my bike, let go of the clutch and try to jump off my bike. And I got thrown about 30 feet, but when I landed in the middle of the street, I was sliding. And I was just tucked into a little ball, kind of like the fetal position. And all I could think was, oh my God, please don't let another car hit me, because I couldn't tell if I was sliding into traffic or where I was going. So when we stopped, I immediately grabbed my leg I was in just sheer pain, and I looked down at my leg and it was in pieces. And it was like one of those horror movies where the artery severed and the blood squirts out. That's what happened. With every pulse, blood was coming out. And I just started screaming, help, someone call 911. I didn't want to try to reach around my backpack and get my phone for fear of, I didn't want to let go of my leg. And then I was saying some cuss words, and it's crazy what goes through your mind, because I thought, here I am cussing, and my Methodist mother is not going to be very proud of me. And then I thought, I had some pulled pork in my backpack, and I thought, my husband's going to kill me. A client had given me some barbecued pork, and it was in his brand new backpack. And then I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be on crutches to train clients next week. All these thoughts were going into my head, and I wasn't even thinking, wow, this moment has changed the rest of my life.
Right. You assumed that it was not a big deal and you'd be back on your feet.
I thought maybe my leg's broken, even though I could tell it was serious by the blood, I thought. And luckily, I feel like I had a guardian angel. I did have a guardian angel. I had a guy come over really, and he whipped his belt off and put a tourniquet on my leg. And he probably saved my life because my femoral artery was severed. And the 911 paramedics got there very quick. They got me transferred. My husband was there at the scene. He followed the ambulance to the hospital, and the last thing I remember before they put me in induced coma was, you know, my husband is a retired lieutenant with the highway patrol, and the whole emergency room was just full of cops. I mean, it was chaotic. There were cops everywhere, and they thought maybe I was an officer down because there were so many cops, because when you're in that police family, word travels like wildfire. And so I heard this screaming, and a sound I'd never heard before. And I look, it's my husband, and I'd never seen him that way. And he had tears running down, and he was pacing back and forth. And I screamed out across the room, "Johnny, I need you to get over here and be strong for me." And the room went dead silent. And he came over and he held my hand, and a nurse leaned over me and said, "We're going to give you something to make you feel better now." And that's the last thing I remember before I woke up from a coma. And the first thing I learned was they said they want to amputate your leg. And
oh my God.
As an athlete my whole life, and a dancer and a professional fitness trainer, and just a passion for working out and running. And I mean, that was my go-to. Running was what saved me from trouble. If I was ever sad, if I was ever anxious, that was my go-to. A lot of other people go to maybe drugs or alcohol. That was my go-to. And suddenly to hear they're going to amputate your leg, I just said, no. Well, before I could talk, when you wake up from a coma, you've got like a mask over your face. You've got breathing tubes breathing for you, and I couldn't breathe. And my arms are flailing. I'm trying to rip the mask off, and the nurse is like, "Oh, she's waking up. She's waking up. She wants to say something." And so the nurse said, "Get her a pen and a pad." And I wrote down, the first thing I wrote was, you know, here my husband's leaning over me so lovingly. And you would think I would say, "I love you, honey. What happened? What," you know, I said, "No, get off my tubes." He was leaning on my tubes and cutting off my air supply. I couldn't breathe. And then the next thing I wrote down was, "Don't tell Savannah." That was my oldest daughter at the time was 13. No, maybe 14. And she was on a trip to the East Coast for school. Well, little did I know, I had almost weeks, and I had no idea. She already knew. And I didn't really know how serious it was. Even though they said they want to amputate your leg, when I saw my mother had taken off of work and flown to the hospital, and she was there too, in ICU, I knew it was serious. But my husband Googled limb salvage, and he found a doctor, and he had a lot of connections, and he found one doctor that was willing to try to save my leg. They described it as like a war wound, that I had a 1% chance of saving it. And he found this doctor at Cedars, Dr. Don Wiss, and got me transferred to Cedars. And I'm telling you, it took an act of God to get me over there. And my
I read
leg
that in the book about the whole, like, making sure that the road had to be totally smooth. And
at first they had a helicopter for me to transport me, and we couldn't get a bed in time. The helicopter waited for hours and finally had to be released. And then they had to take the ambulance very slow all the way from Northridge to Cedars. And it's because my leg was
so
basic
fragile,
up in pieces, and it was held together just by pins and rods. And so they got me transferred, and Dr. Don Wiss came over on a Sunday night. He was away lecturing and he wasn't even at work. He came into the hospital and I'm laying in the bed and I see a guy come in with a beige blazer and I look at the tag. It said Dr. Donald Wiss. And I said, oh my God, you're the man that's going to save my leg. He said, well, first thing we're going to do, we're going to go in and clean it up a little bit, and we're going to see what we're going to do. And surgery after surgery, 34 now total, some of those which I've had in the past few years, but they were able to Dr. Jabor fused, put my femoral artery back together, and they were able to piece by piece put my leg back together, and I still wasn't out of the woods. It took 2 years for the bone to actually fuse together, and
Really?
yeah, it took a long time, and it just,
Were you able to
every
walk on it,
day,
or?
surgery after surgery, mentally preparing myself for the next one. It was like I was going to battle to prepare for that next surgery. And
Wow.
I'm lucky I didn't get an infection.
Oh my God, yes, after 34 surgeries. So, um, you know, wow. I mean, so in how many years, like how many years, like in the first 5 years, like this happened in 2010, right?
Yeah, this was 2010.
So this is
And
7 years ago. So like when did you have the majority of the surgeries? Within the first 2 or 3 years, or?
the first 2 years, I had the majority of the surgeries. The first year is when I had most of them. In the hospital, I would have a surgery and then I would have to recover like a couple of days and then I would have another surgery and I
Oh
would
my
recover
God.
for a day or maybe 2 days. Sometimes they would have to wait a week and put like a wound vac on my leg.
Oh,
But
so you
I
were
I
like a
had a
professional patient. That's what you
oh
did.
man. Oh,
Oh
I
my
got to be. I had a
God.
friend when I got out of the hospital. They said, "Well, weren't you bored in the hospital? Weren't you bored?" And I was not bored for 1 minute. I didn't have time to be bored. And thank God, I had an amazing support system in the hospital. I
Oh, that's
had,
great.
well, first of all, here I am. The first thing I did after, talking to my husband, my mom, my family, I grabbed my phone and I was calling clients, trying to check messages and calling clients, trying to get other trainers to cover my clients and making sure that they were taken care of, not realizing that it would be over a year before I was even going to return back to
Oh
work.
yeah.
And
So you really what I'm hearing is you really minimized the damage, right? I
I
mean,
don't even think I could even grasp how serious it was. And maybe that was
right.
some survival mechanism. I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know. Oh,
I'm sure it was.
yeah. I mean, all
I
I
mean
know is
just
I
to
was
not have
painting
to
my
like,
toenails.
yeah. Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
the Dr. West came in and said, could you not paint your toenails before your surgeries? And it was like, for me, it was maybe back from those roots of it hurts to be pretty or hide your crazy and be a lady. I was
Maybe
trying
it was, yeah,
everything
it
I
was like,
could
yeah, kind of
to
like
be
to kind of
normal.
soothe, just like, yeah, well, like, yeah, just sort of like when somebody dies, sometimes it's soothing just to do the dishes. You know what I mean? Just kind of get into like a routine where you don't have to think, but you can stay busy.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think for me, I wanted to grasp onto any sense of normalcy. So for me,
Yes, that makes
I
sense.
called one of my friends and I asked him, could you bring me a couple of weights to the gym? Because even though I was in between surgeries, I wanted to work out to keep my upper
Yeah.
body strong, but I
Yeah, it makes
also
sense.
knew what working out did for me. And that may sound crazy to some people, but for me,
But that, no, that's
working
true.
out
Yeah.
makes me feel good and it releases endorphins. And so I also
Right.
asked the doctor to install a pull up bar in the bed. So I
Good.
was bedridden, but I could pull myself up. And the
Oh, that's
nurses loved
great.
me because I could use my bedpan and I didn't need their help. So they loved it. But yeah, I think
Well,
it
that's
was
good.
any sense of normalcy.
Yeah. So in the interest of time, I want to make sure that we go over um, a nerve disease that ended up kicking in as a result of the accident, so that people can really understand what you've been through after all these surgeries. So when did you start noticing some kind of problem other than
Well,
the actual
it hurt,
surgeries?
and I would try to push through the pain, just like I did as an athlete, as a dancer. You know,
Hmm.
as a dancer, I was taught, oh, your feet are bleeding in your point shoes. Suck it up, keep going. So
Yeah.
I had been having a lot of pain, and I went for a checkup to a doctor. It was about 3.5 months after my accident, and I was so proud to be walking on crutches. Well, not walking, but out of a wheelchair. I was proud to be upright for the first time, and I could walk a little ways on my one leg, and then I would have to elevate my right leg because I didn't have the circulation.
Mm.
The blood would get stuck at the bottom. And he took one look at my leg and kind of evaluated it, and he diagnosed me with a nerve disease called chronic. Well, back then it was called RSD. Now it's called CRPS, or chronic regional pain syndrome, and it's
Right.
where your nervous system, your sympathetic nervous system, is out of whack, and it causes a constant signal of pain. I try. It's hard for people to understand, but it's kind of like if you have a toothache that never goes away, or if it's like you have anybody that suffered from sciatica and they feel
Hmm.
pain in their leg or their foot, but it's coming from your spine. That's kind of what
Yes.
CRPS is. And I was devastated when I was diagnosed with this disease and in complete denial, and went to two other doctors because I didn't want to
Hmm.
believe that diagnosis. And they both said, the other two doctors said the same thing, that I had this nerve condition. There's no cure for it. There are treatments that seem to have known to help, but they said, are
But
you?
basically, excuse me, it's a chronic pain issue, basically, just so the
It's a
viewers
chronic
understand it.
pain. It's nicknamed the suicide disease because people
Mm.
who find out that they have this nerve disease and know that they're going to be in chronic pain the rest of their life, um, they don't want to go on living. And so
Hmm.
I'm trying to bring awareness about this disease and trying to change the narrative about it a little bit, because
Right.
when I did research when I was diagnosed, I was devastated to learn what the symptoms were, and it it left me with no hope. And so
Right.
what I had to do was kind of create some tools to cope with pain and create some tools to not dive and spiral down into a depression, because that's where I was headed.
Of
And I
course.
never in my life been a depressed person because I had always been
Right.
an active person. And now I couldn't really do activity other than some upper body weights and a little bit of the bike eventually. And so I really
Right.
had to develop some tools on how to deal with that chronic pain.
Well,
And that's what
and
I share in
maybe,
my book too.
yeah. Well, you know, this is what I wanted to share with the audience, is that I actually was diagnosed with this same issue about 4 years ago, I'd say. I thought, so for me, and these were the symptoms for me, um, I started getting this burning sensation in the bottom of my feet. And it was after I bought a pair of shoes that were just slightly tight, and I remember wearing them for a walk or something. And after I took them off, I noticed that my left foot was sort of just tingly, but not burning really. And then the next day, both of my feet were tingling. And then the next day, like my left foot was like sort of burning the bottom of it. And anyway, so I went to my doctor, and they said, "Oh, well, you have peripheral neuropathy," which is a very common issue for people that are diabetic or people that have had chemotherapy. So the symptoms are very similar to chronic regional pain syndrome in terms of, at least from what I understand, is
Mhm.
that is that there's a burning sensation, which is a typical nerve pain thing. But what's different from what I was told is that CRPS, or chronic regional pain syndrome, is typically triggered by some kind of a physical injury, like what happened to you, right?
Uh-huh.
And in
Yeah,
my
it can be triggered
situation,
from like a sprained ankle or a broken bone, or and
yeah,
and
and
I've
I didn't
tried
have any of that.
several.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's what's so weird about it. So anyway, but the point being is that I ended up getting diagnosed with it too. And so when Amberly and I got together and realized we'd been both diagnosed with this same very rare issue, it was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
a
It's
person
a
that
small
gets it.
world.
So
Yeah.
anyway, so I
Yeah.
just thought I'd share that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there are treatments like I've had a spinal stimulator, I've had nerve
Hmm.
blocks, I've had ketamine infusions. I'd never done a drug in my life, and all of a sudden they're infusing me with ketamine. But really, what I had to go to were tools to not spiral in that depression. I had
Hmm.
to really focus on teamwork and a support system, a loving support
Hmm.
system. I had to, for the first time in my life, really have the courage to ask for help,
Hmm.
accept help, know when I needed help.
Hmm.
Um, for me, it was a lot to just embrace some vulnerabilities.
Oh my God,
Um,
yes.
in the hospital, I really learned the power of gratitude. And
Hmm.
because I had a choice, I could be a victim and feel sorry for myself or live in
Hmm.
anger, or I could go to a place where I'm in gratitude and I focus on what I'm grateful for. And when you're in a place of uh, counting your blessings and focusing on what's
Hmm.
good, that's what I
Hmm.
did. I took out a pad and a pen and I wrote down every nurse that came to see me. I
Hmm.
wrote down all my friends that came to see me.
Hmm.
I wrote down they would bring food uh,
Mm.
and just their support, just them being there. I had friends that would come and sit and hold my hand and pray with me. So that gratitude list that I had really saved me and pulled me out of that depression. But it was also
Yeah.
that teamwork that I had, that all the people that surrounded me. And,
Hmm.
being a trainer, I had a lot of clients that depended on me. Well,
Right.
now I needed them more than they
Oh,
needed me. In the
wow.
hospital, they gave me a sense of purpose because I would write out exercise plans for them, but also
Hmm.
the nurses. My room was like the party room. I had the food, I had the fridge. They would come in and hang out.
You
I
had
would
a
have them
fridge and
do
everything in your room?
workouts. I did. I had them bring me a fridge in the
Oh,
room.
okay. Of
And so,
course.
yeah. And so I had the nurses doing exercises. So I think, if you can not lose sight of your passion and do it
Yes.
in some way, be of service, because I know when
Yes.
I was of service and I took the focus off of me and
Right.
what I was going through, and I could help others, even if I was on the phone talking with clients, giving them
Right.
exercise tips or advice, that gave me purpose and that helped me. And so
Yeah.
that really saved me. And those are two of my big go-tos, are those things.
Cool. Well, that's so helpful because it is easy to get sort of into your own pain when you're in pain. And uh, so, what's interesting about this topic is that I didn't realize this until I started dealing with chronic pain. Is that something like 1 in 4 people over something like 40 are dealing with chronic pain or will be dealing with chronic pain? So, what would you recommend? In terms of how to deal with pain management if you do have
I
chronic pain?
talked to my dad on the phone this afternoon. He just had a major back surgery. And
Mm-hmm.
I told him, Dad, I said, don't ever get too hungry, don't get too tired, and make sure you've got people around you that are loving and they believe in you and they believe in your dreams. You've got a good support system.
Mm-hmm.
And you really have to listen to your body. For me, I had to reprogram myself because I was taught to suck it up and push through the pain and no pain, no gain. Well, with
Mm-hmm.
something like chronic pain, if you push yourself too hard, there's a fine line, a fine balance.
Yeah.
You want to listen to your body. I've learned this lesson over and over and over. I read the definition of insanity, and that was me. I was insane. I kept doing the same thing and ending up in like severe pain and thinking
Yeah.
I would have a different outcome. And that's insane. And so, what I've had to do is really listen to my body. If you have chronic pain,
Mm-hmm.
what are the tools that your doctor suggests that you do? What are
Yes.
the medicines that your doctor prescribes for you to take? That was huge for me. I was so stubborn I did not want to take any kind of medicine. I didn't want to be dependent on anything. And, it's really important to not only listen to, I got myself into trouble because I was trying to push through the pain. I wasn't taking my medicine, and I was to the point where I could barely walk. So I learned to not only listen to my body, but listen to my real physician and follow their advice. And do things with chronic pain, like embrace your pain. In a way, embrace your vulnerabilities. It's okay that you feel weak sometimes or you feel pain sometimes. It's just gathering enough strength and courage to move forward past that. That was something I had to learn, that, give myself breaks. It's okay.
Like give yourself permission to just feel the pain. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Just feel the sadness of having to deal with it.
And learn to take a break. Don't quit, but learn to take a break. That's what I've had to learn to do, is learn to rest, but not quit. Don't ever quit.
So what does it look like to rest and not quit? Like just in a practical, just for our viewers. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm kind of crazy I'm on my feet a lot. Like, honestly, the doctors cannot believe. When I went to one of the top doctors in the world, Dr. Joshua Prager, for my spinal stimulator, which didn't end up working out, but I went in, I walked in his office, and I've got on my cowboy boots and I'm walking. I was the only one in the office with no cane, no crutch, no wheelchair. And I walk in and I had my leg covered up so he couldn't see that it was discolored or even scarred or anything. And at first he was like, I don't think you have CRPS. And I said, oh, good. Thank God. Yes, finally a doctor that says what I want him to say. And then he looked at my leg and he did all kinds of tests. He didn't, you can't ever judge a book by its cover. One person's rest might be totally different for someone else. For me, rest is just not going to the gym and working out like a maniac. Rest might be occasionally getting in the pool and floating, or rest may be.
So self-care things, it sounds like.
It's self-care. What makes you feel good? Going down to the, in California, we have the local massage places. For $25, you can get a massage. Doing self-care things, taking care of yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And so for you then, what would you say are your biggest motivators as far as, like how you can hit rock bottom and then have the strength to get back up?
I think my biggest motivator and my inspiration when I was down and didn't think I could get up were my daughters. And I'm lucky. I'm really blessed that I had those daughters. There were days when I thought I was so in so much pain. I was nauseated and I was throwing up. And I would hear like my youngest daughter's little voice say, "Mama." And I knew I had to get up. I wanted to be an example for them. They inspire me to be a good person. They inspire me to be better. My youngest daughter was just awarded at school. She got awarded for her passion, and she got an award for her empathy. And as a mother, that made me so proud, because I want to raise daughters that show compassion and have passion. I want to raise daughters that see their mama that's a survivor, not playing into victimhood, that's not making excuses. But I may have one step forward, two step backs, but I want to have 5 step forwards the next day.
I love how you're really setting the example that you can be a woman who is in her power, and yet also it's okay to feel the pain or the vulnerability, or if you feel like, oh my God, I can't, like if you have a really bad day, it's okay to feel that. You don't have to camp out in it. But I love how you've given your daughters and the people around you permission to be authentic with your feelings, but still be focused on what you want, and that you still can create a great life. So I love that.
Yeah, I tell you though, my youngest daughter came home from school a couple of weeks ago, and she said, "Mama, my friend at school, she was just complaining and just complaining, and I told her finally to suck it up." And I said, "Oh no, oh God." I said, no, first, you want to validate their feelings first. You don't just tell somebody to suck it up. So, I'm not perfect as a mother. I try to set a good
Yeah, of
example,
course.
but,
Yeah,
they definitely keep me on my toes.
I love it. So now okay, so after this whole accident, you've reinvented yourself as a motivational speaker and you've written a wonderful new book and you have a publisher. And I mean, I'm just so like excited for you.
Yeah, it's
So
exciting.
tell us
It's
about this
exciting.
whole sort of transformation that's taken place for you of your life and
You
your
know,
career.
well, in my fitness career, I had, at first when I got back into training, I had people saying, well, what are you going to do? You can't be a trainer. And I let somebody's can'ts motivate me. That's one of my biggest motivators. I had one of the doctors in the
Oh,
hospital say,
okay.
well, you'll
I'll
never
show
run
you I
again.
can if you say I can't. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, but I have to admit, I felt broken when I first got back into training, and I thought, who's going to want
Oh,
to
well,
train me?
yeah. Yeah.
And to my surprise, I had a lot of people that wanted to train because they saw what I did in the gym. They saw me in the wheelchair in my gym. They saw me on my crutches. They saw me with a cast on my arm. They saw me in a cast on my leg. They saw that I never gave up, that I was
Yeah.
determined to keep pushing forward. And so my clientele boomed. And then I had people reach out and say, hey, you know what? Could you talk to my mom? She's having trouble. She doesn't want to get up after she's had this surgery. Or another person said, hey, could you give my friend a call? They're really having a hard time. I think if they heard your story, it would motivate them to move forward. You can share with them, about
Yeah.
gratitude and about teamwork. And so I got asked, I didn't know how to be a speaker. So I was referred to Deborah Shames and David Booth, who referred me to
Yes.
you. And
Yes.
the first time I met with her, she said, I want you to speak to my group. And I said, well, I don't have a speech together. I've never, I don't know. I haven't put anything together. She goes, that's okay. You'll get it. I spoke to her group. From that point on, I spoke to another group and another group and another group. And then I had someone say, you should write a book. And I thought, yeah, I'll write a book. Now, computers weren't my thing. I hand wrote
Right.
the whole entire book and then later went and
I
typed it.
love it.
So
I
it's been
love
a
it.
learning journey. And the experience of writing a book has been very healing because
I bet.
I had to take a deep look at things that happened that I thought I had dealt
Hmm.
with that I
Yeah.
wanted to bring to the table. So people who've gone
Hmm.
through divorce, people who've gone through being a single mother, people who've been sexually abused, they can read
Hmm.
the book and go, oh, I can relate. Oh, that
Or
happened to her.
people that are struggling with chronic pain, you know?
People that
Yeah.
are struggling with chronic pain, people that are struggling from one surgery. Also talk about, it was transformational and I had to reinvent myself. And
Hmm.
also I had to learn to love myself again. And I talk a lot
Hmm.
about that because I didn't like myself. I hated my leg. And hate's a
Hmm.
strong word in our family. That's a four-letter word in our family. And I can say I hated my leg and it gave me so much pain that I actually asked the doctors if they could go ahead and amputate it after all these surgeries to save it.
Wow.
Um, and it wouldn't relieve my pain because it wasn't coming from my leg. It was coming from the CRPS. Um,
Oh my God. So even
or,
if you had the amputation, you would still have the CRPS?
yeah, because it's not stemming from, it's kind of like phantom. It would be like phantom pain.
Oh my
And
God.
so I didn't realize, I just got back from Florida a few days ago, and it was the first time. My surgery was 7 years ago since I've had all the surgeries. Well, not since the
Right.
last surgery, but since the accident. And it was the first time I really realized I had changed in that, we were on the beach, we were poolside, and we were at the Fountain Blue in Miami. It was like hip hop day, and there were hot girls
Wow.
everywhere. And I was comfortable in my own skin with my mangled
Oh,
looking leg. And I had
I
someone
love
come
it.
up and say, wow, what happened to you? Were you a attacked by a shark? And I was like, yeah, great white. But no, it's something I don't mind if people ask me. I don't mind. I
Yeah.
don't mind sharing my journey. And I didn't realize until I was there that, wow, I used to try to cover up my scars. I used to try to
Yeah.
hide the fact that something was wrong with me. And
Right.
once you embrace your insecurities, and there's nothing anybody can say that's going to bring you down, because
Exactly.
yeah, you've accepted it. That was what I really had to do to get me through, was to accept my new normal, that this is what it is. This is me. And once you accept and embrace those things, you can move forward and learn to love yourself.
Well, and then obviously help other people love themselves too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That was a huge learning experience for me. And it wasn't until I could walk on the beach for the first time and expose my leg in shorts. I had a doctor tell me, oh, well, you'll never wear shorts again. And
Oh
I
my
wear a
God.
bikini. Thank you very much.
Oh my
no,
God. Good for
it's
you.
just it's being, owning your story.
Right.
That's it. Period.
Oh my
Just
God.
own your
This is
story.
so Brene Brown. You know Brene Brown, right? Another tech woman.
Oh, yeah, I love her.
So one of her greatest sayings that I love, one of her greatest quotes is, "When you own your story, you get to write the ending."
Oh, I love that.
Versus when we don't own our story, then it like life happens to us. Versus when we own it, we're obviously taking responsibility for how we're going to move forward. So yeah,
Exactly. That we have a choice. It gives us
yes,
options for, we have a choice. We have a choice in
yeah,
how we want to feel. We have a choice to be
right.
happy.
And so your whole book then, of true grit and grace is about this story, and just your, not just the accident, but just your whole sort of life and all the lessons you've learned. And if you wouldn't mind just sort
Yeah,
of
it
giving a
really
recap.
demonstrates how to hit rock bottom and how to climb
Hmm.
your way out. And
Hmm.
it shows that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and the light's inside you. And if yours is
Hmm.
dim, then you've got to find the ways to light that light up. And
Hmm.
that's what my book is about inspiring and motivating and moving forward in
Hmm.
acceptance and self-love and being comfortable in your own skin no matter what, and not carrying
I love
around
that.
shame.
Well, oh my God, that's so dear to my heart, because that's a lot of the work I've done is about letting go of shame from, my own journey. So I can totally relate to that. And I just am loving that we've had a chance to talk tonight. So we're just about out of time.
Thank
So we
you.
need to move forward. But I do want to, I always ask every one of my guests, what message are you most passionate about that you want to leave with our viewers tonight?
Um, well, I do want to say, please come to my website, amberlylago.com, and you can
Hmm.
sign up and get my newsletter, and you can find out more about my book, which will be on pre-sale on Amazon in September. And
Hmm.
no matter what, embrace, have self-love, move forward. I just wanted to say that no matter what, no matter what circumstances have narrowed your possibilities, you have a choice, and you can move forward, and you can be happy and live the life you've always imagined. And thank you for letting me share my story.
Well, you are very welcome. Thank you so much, Amberly. I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye tonight, but just want to just acknowledge you, and I'd love to have you back for another interview. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks
Okay,
so
bye
much.
bye. All right. Well, that was awesome. Amberly is so fun and so cool. And oh my God, who knew that I would meet somebody else that had similar challenges as me? Of course, the law of attraction is alive and well. Okay, a couple of announcements, and then we're going to wrap up for the evening. I do always like to include a coaching challenge where I actually have it be related to something that ties in with the topic. So I thought tonight would be learning how to practice acceptance. Part of what happened for me when I realized I had a chronic pain issue was, well, first of all, just experiencing the loss of normally you just don't expect your feet to be burning on a regular basis. So the fact that you have something that's chronic is really difficult at first. So just accepting the loss of that well-being was really key for me. But then I had to get into some acceptance. And like Byron Katie's one of my favorite teachers, and she wrote the book Loving What Is. And so one of her sayings is, when you argue with reality, you lose every time. So not accepting what is, a lot of times, is the biggest emotional pain when we're in emotional pain versus the actual thing itself. So for me, just accepting that, okay, I have this issue, for whatever reason, it's in my life. And I always try to look at things that are like this, like there's something that wants to get healed. And I try to look for the sort of the rainbow in the clouds, and just accepting, it is what it is, and yet still being proactive about finding solutions. And so, fortunately for me, I did get the spinal cord stimulator surgery, and it did really help. And so I've had a major success with my situation, and yet it's still an issue. It's not like it's gone completely, but it's a lot better than it was. But the point is that no matter what challenge you have, it's like the first step is really letting yourself feel the loss of whatever it is, but then learning how to accept it, and then also focus on how to be proactive, so that you're not a victim of it, but you're looking at it from what it's here to teach you. So that's our coaching challenge for today. The other couple things I wanted to mention is that I am a life coach, and I have a couple of ways that I work with clients. The first way is live streaming. I actually am able to produce a live stream show for you. So if you're a person that's challenged in terms of technology, all you have to do is log in like Amberly did tonight, and I can actually, in the background, run a show for you, or a seminar, or whatever it may be that you want to do, whether it's live streaming or just a private seminar through like Zoom or Skype or something. So if you're interested in any of that, just go up to my website and go to the coaching tab for live stream. And the other kind of coaching I do is for what I call living your highest calling. And typically the people I work with for this are people that are similar, that were in a similar age when I first really got the compelling clarity that I needed to go after my dream and live my calling and be true to myself. And so if you're at a place in your life where you're maybe in midlife, you're between 45 and 70, and you're like, I just don't want to die with my music still in me, well, I can help you. I was really struggling with this issue for many years, and now I'm doing it, and I can help you do it as well. So if you're interested in needing help in being true to yourself and really living without regrets at the end of your life, go up to my website and go to the coaching section. Okay, so next week, I'm really excited, is our Conscious Conversation Salon, which is a different format that I do once a month. And it's basically like an in-person conversation salon where there's a topic that people get together, and it's like a lively discussion. And so we do it, though, through live stream. And so what I'm doing now is I'm having a guest host show up with me for each of my salons. And so next week, which is July the 5th, I'm going to be guest hosting with my other BFF, Jess, or Jesslyn Armstrong, who is the Jess, Mary, and Carrie gang that I met these two ladies on my Hay House cruise. And so Jess is a wonderful healer and writer, and so she's going to join me, and we're going to talk about women and bravery. Is this like the greatest topic or what? And so we're going to talk about women and bravery, and also how it ties in with the hero's journey. So it's going to be really, really fun. So make sure you stay tuned for that next week. And by the way, it's designed for you to really get involved in the conversation. So by making comments or asking questions. And so please join us live. It'll be really, really fun. Okay, so what else do I have? I do have one last thing. And what that is I always ask each of you every single week at the end of the show, what is one thing that you can do to be true to yourself? And when you take that step and put that on your calendar and make sure you actually do it, you'll be amazed at what happens. So have a great week, and we will talk to you next week. Bye, everybody.